Welcome to Sunlight on Suffield. I'm Annie Hornish. Today we're thrilled to have on our podcast Mike Malloy, who's running for state representative in Connecticut's 61st District. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Annie, and thank you for having me, and thank you to Cox Television for setting up this venue for small productions, which oftentimes have nowhere to go. And I would like to thank Cox Cable for that, and thank you for inviting me on.
Of course, yes, they do a great job.
They do
a great job, great public service.
Totally.
So you're running for state representative against a long-term incumbent. So first, before we get into the issues,
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I am a resident of East Granby. I've lived there for 21 years. Very shortly after I moved to East Granby, I became involved with boards and commissions, and subsequently I've gotten much more involved over time. I've served for 15 years on the Board of Finance. It might be 16 now, but the exact date escapes me. I've served on multiple boards and commissions in East Granby, from land use to building committees to a multitude of things, Little League, et cetera. Mm-hmm. I have a 21-year-old son that's at UConn. Yeah. And doing well, which is always good, right? And having fun. But my son went through the schools in East Granby, so I'm very familiar with public education. I have a business, which I have been running for in various iterations for about 30 years. I used to have a business that started in Suffield at Mountain Road. I built that over time and subsequently invested in multiple other businesses and ventures. So I've done quite a few things business-wise. Mm-hmm. I have built businesses, I've sold businesses, I continue to run several enterprises, and including my business, my primary business in East Granby. So I've had employees. I've had maybe 50 employees over the last 30 years. Mm-hmm. And I've dealt with every bureaucracy and regulation you can imagine, and I have a lot of opinions on that. Yeah. So it's it would be very interesting for me to get in the legislature where these decisions are made. Mm-hmm. I'm very proud of the fact that I've provided health insurance to my employees for close to 20 years in various versions, because some people come with insurance, but I've always found a way to ensure that their income provided health insurance. Mm-hmm. I have, I've done a lot in town, and I really feel that my experience as a business owner, an entrepreneur of sorts, and as somebody who's been very involved with local politics and has taken on many causes over that time that I thought were critical. Mm-hmm. My philosophy is you find out what the facts are, make sure you're right, and then fight for it. Good. And I think when you approach it that way, you eliminate a lot of the ideological or partisan stuff, because sometimes you get into a battle and you realize the other side is right. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you realize they have a very valid points to make. And if you work to find some sort of consensus and some sort of middle ground for the issues that affect us daily in this state, you can get a lot done. It drives me crazy when people get into their camps and start doing things just based on ideology, because everybody has something intelligent to say. Yeah. What's the old saying? A broken clock's right twice a day.
Right,
twice
exactly.
a day. Anyway, and sometimes that clock's right 3 times a day. It starts working for a minute, right?
Right.
So anyway, my point is that I found that to get things done locally and regionally, and working in tandem with I'm the chairman of the Tri-Town Cable Committee, which is 3 towns, Granby, Heartland, and East Granby. Mm-hmm. We've produced public access programming for the Tri-Town area. I've been doing it for close to 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I found that the needs of each town are very different. Mm-hmm. We have a small town, Heartland, that doesn't really want anything taped except for their parades and their land trust meetings. Mm-hmm. And then we have a town like Granby that tapes every possible meeting you could possibly have. And East Granby, which it's a mix. I mean, you really got... But I'm very proud of that, and I'm proud of the fact that we brought programming to the towns, especially through COVID. Yep. Because when everything was shut down, we were still providing information, and we also provided on the internet through our website, and that's been a very rewarding part. But I think I take the most. I think I bring the most to the table with the diversity of experiences that I have, and my ability to work in a bipartisan manner to get things done. I'm very proud of that. So.
Yeah, that's a very impressive resume you have there. Yeah, so why are you running, like in terms of for a position of state representative?
So to segue off what I just said, I think I bring a lot to the table. I think I have the ability to work with almost anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is kind of a crude way to put it, but I have a saying that I always tell people that are running for office in town, and there's two things that they're nervous about: is working with people that they don't really get along with, and working with people that are being afraid to lose.
Yeah.
To the first point, I would say if you're afraid of losing a race, don't do it, because this is not a referendum on you; it's a referendum on the body politic, and sometimes it's almost a seventh grade popularity contest, and you never get your message out. Doesn't mean that you're not the most talented person in the room. And if I'm supporting you and the other people in town are supporting you, take something from that. The other part, probably even more important, is working with people you don't get along with. And to very simply sum it up, I always say, if you run for office and you win, and you can't have a beer with the guy that you're going to sit in a meeting with after, just no matter how different your opinions are, don't do it. Find something else to do civically, because you need to have that camaraderie. You're working together. Once you get on that board, once you get in the legislature, once you get on a commission, you should be working to make your district, your town, your state better. You shouldn't be working for an ideology if you're looking for solutions. And I think that often gets lost. And I've seen that oftentimes on local issues and on state issues also.
Yeah, we're sadly seeing more and more of that nowadays, and people are
Washington's
digging
a mess.
Dysfunctional,
dysfunctional
to the hilt.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So, speaking of the legislature,
Yes.
I just like to ask you a little bit about your opponent, the long-term incumbent that you're taking on. Were there any specific votes that Representative Zawistowski had that compelled you to run for office, that really stuck out, that you wanted to be a different voice in Hartford on?
Yes, I think that there's been many things we've disagreed with over the years. I will say that if you want to just focus on the key ones, it's interesting because my first experience in politics was in East Granby with, there was a school project. I mean, I was kind of involved and I was volunteering kind of innocently on these different boards and commissions. Like I had a new son and I was, we were trying to like make a home in East Granby, and you're looking at what you can do. And I'm a pretty opinionated guy, and I'm if nothing else, I'm not afraid to speak truth to power, I guess is a term you would use. Is if I see something's wrong, I think you could ask anybody in East Granby, I'm going to say it. As a matter of fact, people call me oftentimes when there's an issue that nobody wants to stand up on, and they're asking my opinion on what do you think we should do. Well, that being said, about 15 years ago, there was a school project that was presented to the town to merge our two elementary schools. We're a very small town. We have two elementary schools. Strategically and financially, it's not necessary. It was just the nature of how the town was built up. And there was a very good plan to merge those two schools, representing a reduction in cost for maintenance, for staffing, for a more fluid way of teaching kids in children in a small town. And I think I looked at it as a young parent. My son hadn't started school yet. And I'm looking at the plan and I'm thinking, this is great. This is really, because there was some real serious issues with both of the other ones that were going to have to be addressed, regardless of if we did the plan. And I started seeing this like underbelly of like resistance to it because it was money and we were spending money on something. And I'm thinking, well, I'm a business guy. You either spend it now or you spend it later. And it's usually better to spend it now when you don't have to do it in an emergency or with it. So the mantra I always use as a business owner is do it when you don't have to.
Right.
You should be looking ahead. You should be planning for what comes next. The plan came up. It was presented. We had a change of administrations right around that time, so there was kind of a break in the kind of fluidity of the whole project or the presentation to the town. And almost immediately there was a group that organized. It was the taxpayer group. And I believe Tammy was the treasurer of that, and I'm not sure if it was her husband or somebody else was the president, but it was a very vocal, opinionated group that was against almost any spending and against any tax increases. Now, being realistic, I understand that they can have that philosophy, but you still have to deal with the issues at hand. We had an issue. We were going to fix it. So I thought, innocently again, that we're going to present this to the town, we're going to give them the facts, and they're going to decide. Well, the taxpayer group outside of the body, but the administration that was presenting it, started printing signs that said vote no to a 50% tax increase. Well, the 50% tax increase was fiction. It was completely made up. And I'm looking at it, and nobody's really getting up and like stamping their feet and saying, you're lying about this, you know? So I remember going to the town meeting, and I had printed out the actual financials. And the actual financials represented a 6% tax increase. And not to go on and on about this, but it's kind of a pivotal example of where I'm coming from. 6% increase over 3 or 4 or 5 years, whatever it was. Not that different than if we repaired them independently, and it would have built an independent single elementary school that was modern and up to date and had enough space. And it would have used the old elementary school we were abandoning right next to the town hall, and it would have given us extra reserve space going forward almost for decades because we're a small town. And it would have given plenty of space for something like a standalone senior center. There was a lot of plans. Nobody who had to deal with those right then. We needed to fix the school. We had asbestos. We had leaking roofs. We had all sorts of things. The 50% tax increase was fiction. I stood in front of the town at the town meeting and said, this is a lie. These are the facts. And none of the members of the board wanted to take it on because they could see where this was going. Who was going to vote for a 50% tax increase? That's what got me motivated. Now, Tammy and her group opposed that. It went down in flames. It literally was a 65 to 35 vote because of the 50% tax increase. And I went up to one of the members of the taxpayer group right after the vote, and I said, why didn't you just present the facts? I mean, let the town decide. Why do you need to do this fictional, like, scare tactic? And the answer I got was because it worked. And it works. And I realized at that point, we're dealing with a different kind of dynamic than I learned in high school civics, which is you present your ideas, democracy works with opposing ideas, but it only works if there's honesty and trust in the room, okay? I think that's been broken. And, you know, I think that looking down over Tammy's votes over the last 10 years, how long she's been in the legislature, there's many things that I find that once again, it's a resistance to change without offering an option. When we sat we have a long history of being on different sides of issues in town. When we sat on the Board of Finance together, she would routinely offer a 0% increase. That would have resulted in the loss of like 6 or 7 teachers. You have fixed costs, whether it's the town government, the state government. Tell me when I've gone on too long.
Oh, no, this is great.
The state government, the town government, the federal government. You have to pay your bills, do that first, and then see where you're at. What she would propose is 0% as some sort of like just fly in the ointment of the conversation, where you couldn't even like bargain. And I would routinely, probably 3 or 4 times, I was only on the board with her for a couple of years, but 3 or 4 times, I said to her, Tammy, I get it that you don't want to spend money, or anybody. I say this to anybody who doesn't want to spend money. What would you cut? Silence. They never want to propose a solution.
Right.
They want to propose opposition. Tammy has had a vote no sign in her front yard for the last 15 years for almost every town budget. Some of them were very frugal. Some of them were like to the point where we were cutting things to just get there. You know, over the 15 years, we've gone 2008, 2014, there's been COVID, 2020. We've had a variety of different challenges that come, and they're always going to come. But you have to sit down with what you have, the facts, not your ideology, not your rhetoric. You need to find a solution. In the last 2 years, I've seen votes that just made me fall off my chair. We had after Roe versus Wade was defeated in the Supreme Court, Tammy voted against a bill that was almost unanimously approved to give doctors from states who immediately repealed Roe versus Wade and may have been exposed to legal repercussions. These are OBGYNs that are trying to help women, oftentimes in distress. And there was a bill in Connecticut to say if they're in Connecticut, we are not going to enforce these draconian laws from states that are in the Stone Age. Okay? She voted against it. She voted against giving a woman the right to have a pharmacist prescribe contraceptive medication. So if something happens and a woman's not in a situation where she was cognizant of what was going on, or maybe just made a mistake, I'm not even going to get into the details, but if there was a situation where a woman realized that she might be pregnant within a couple days of the pregnancy, there are ways to deal with that are very humane for everybody involved. She voted against that. When there was a gunman at in Las Vegas who put a bump stock on his assault rifle, he wasn't hunting for deer. I can tell you that. He wasn't going pheasant hunting with that thing. There's only one reason to have a bump stock, and that's to kill people. The government knows that. The people in the NRA know that, and Tammy knows that. They had a bill in the Connecticut legislature to ban it. She voted against it. The NRA supported it. The NRA supported it, and Tammy still thought it was infringing on legal gun owners' rights. I'm all for gun owners' rights. Three-quarters of my friends hunt or own guns. You're a legal gun owner, and you don't have some reason you shouldn't have a gun, and you're willing to go and take your gun safety lessons like we used to do when I was a kid. You had the NRA would have little classes they would have for kids, even for their BB guns. That was when it worked. Now, but when you oppose something that's designed specifically to kill people and to murder innocent civilians, God forbid it's in a classroom like we saw in Connecticut, you need to have common sense legislation so we can maintain our rights to bear arms, not so we can take them away. Because if you don't fix it, if you have an institution that can't work together and find common ground on how to find some solutions to try to work to solve this problem, you are going to have things taken away. You're going to have your rights taken away because you're acting like a child. You know what I mean? And we cannot continue to do that as a society. I don't care if it's health care, gun reform, rent reform, the issues that I deal with as a business owner, where we have, and I often will take a different stance on this than many of my Democratic colleagues, I'm sure would. But when you have inability of small businesses to access the same level of services and provide the same services to their employees that big businesses do, because it's the rules are the same. If you want to set up a pension plan, this is not Connecticut, but this is federal. If you want to set up a pension plan, there's requirements, and if you get wrong, which we did once, you have a $5,500 fine, and there was two members for missing one form, because it's the same $5,500 fine for a little car repair facility as it is for IBM.
Wow.
And there's nobody looking at that. That's what we need to look at. How do we segregate the legislation in Connecticut so it doesn't hurt the small guy, but and still holds some of the bigger institutions accountable in a way that protects the mass of the people? So
a sliding scale of sorts for
exactly right,
because that makes no sense. It's a drop, and that's a cost of doing business for a large company who might want to skirt the law. But a small business can't afford to make that mistake, and it hurts them more because
it prevents them from offering service or programs to their employees, because they're afraid of getting involved. The biggest kick I get is when Tammy and some of the Republicans say, we are fighting for small business, we know what's good for them. I think, BS. I've run small businesses. I've run into all these regulations, and I can tell you what works and what doesn't. They're always going after healthcare. I mean, they're like obsessed with people not having access to health care. It's like, to me, it's bizarre as a small business owner. The best thing that ever happened to my business was, in terms of a financial windfall, was Obamacare. You don't hear that on Fox News. You don't hear that from Tammy and the Republican people that our representatives have tried to make it seem like it was something bad. What's broke it was the inability of Congress to reform it as a situation on the ground changed. You have to change. They set up a program which immediately saved myself as a small business owner. I was paying $1,800 a month for a family plan. The first year of Obamacare, I was paying $700 a month for better coverage. You don't see that anywhere. What you see is people claiming it was forced on them. That's the conversation that I got into. And I had that debate with a lot of folks. This doesn't really apply. Well, it does in some ways. We should be looking in Connecticut at a more affordable option for small businesses or anybody who doesn't have insurance. We really haven't, I don't think we've taken the bull by the horns on that one and really looked at, a couple of years ago, Curry, the Secretary of State, was he the comptroller?
He was the comptroller.
Comptroller, came up with, he was proposing to allow small businesses and individuals to buy into the state plan.
Right.
And I had conversations with a lot of folks at the time because I was very much in favor of that because it's a great plan, even if it was a little more money than the Affordable Health Care Act. But there was other reasons. But my point is, don't stop the conversation there. Keep going. Keep talking. Keep finding a solution. That's the one thing I've always found that, and to kind of segue into maybe kind of why I think I would be better at that is because I've dealt with it on every level.
Yep.
And I've found that it's frustrating because you see the solution sitting there.
Right.
But because this party and this party can't figure out how to talk to each other on it, and then when this party's listening to this person over here, and this party's listening to this party over here, they don't even want to because they're going to lose some support. That's not okay.
Right, I agree.
And I think Suffield, East Granby, and Windsor-Locks offer a very unique have a unique opportunity if they elect somebody like myself who's willing to work across that divide and not just run on ideology, because we are currently a Republican represented district. I'm a Democrat.
Yep.
If I walk in there as basically an independent Democrat because I just got elected to a district that I wasn't supposed to win, I'll have a lot of gravitas.
Yeah.
People will listen to me. And I bring a lot to that table, I believe. Not to blow my own horn too much, but I really think that I have a lot of opinions on a lot of different things, and I seem to be like I find pleasure in finding solutions to those, not things to argue about. But anyway.
Yeah, I like the comments you made about the merging small businesses, buying into the state plan, the economies of scale that can be had by allowing that. That's and as we know, small businesses are the backbone of our economy. It's not the big employers; it's small businesses. And
especially our communities.
Right, and it should especially our communities at the local level, and it should be something both Republicans and Democrats can agree on and get behind and support. So I'm glad you're bringing that experience to the table. And
Annie, you were in the legislature.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about. Those camps can get very entrenched.
Extremely.
It's frustrating.
When I was a state representative for the 62nd, which did include East Granby at the time. It was partisan, but not that bad. We still met and spoke with people. Now it's a lot worse. It's very ideologically, and as you go up to the federal level, we're approaching insanity in some groups. And we need to get past that. And I think people are getting tired of it all. And it's like watching, a circus every day, frankly, what we're seeing.
I know I'm getting tired of it.
I know, yeah. Yeah, and that was one of the best experiences of my life, serving the district for my district in the Connecticut legislature.
And you did a hell of a job.
I did it. Yes, I did, and I enjoyed it. And it was nice to help people. And I think you'd be a fantastic representative.
Well, thank you.
Because you care about people.
I love fixing things. Yeah, I really do.
Yeah, yeah, like to your business model, right? That's perfect.
Cars are people.
Yeah. So I have another question for you. This is going to be a couple Suffield specific questions.
Yeah.
Now, according to the American Library Association, Connecticut was one of 17 states that had more than 100 books challenged. So we were in this top group of states, 113 in particular. And in Suffield, the book was called What Are My Words, which deals with gender expression and identification. Would you support a bill that would fight censorship? Now, in 2024, House Bill 5417 would require school boards for school libraries to require a reason be provided for censoring a book.
Right.
And it made it out of the Education Committee. Tammy doesn't serve on that, but it was 28-17 on party lines. That's how the vote went.
Right.
And then it died on the House calendar. Would you get behind a book that would expand that to include both school and local libraries? Or do you have any other ideas for how libraries can safeguard a citizen's ability to choose what books they want themselves and their children to read?
Yeah, actually, I feel very strongly about it. I think that in a controlled environment, especially in a school or a library, it's the opportune time for children to learn and have questions and get them answered. I think that if you don't, I think any form of censorship, short of violence and advocating for issues that basically step on somebody else's rights. So if you had I wouldn't want to have a book on an end cap that said how to make a bomb.
Right.
You know what I mean? I wouldn't want to have it. But to your point, I think that bill actually addresses much of that because there's a very clear reason why you would not want to have that.
Yep.
If you were, I think at the very least, I didn't know about that bill, but as I'm pondering it here, I think that that's a very good way. You can do what you want, just be accountable for it. At the very least, you should have to answer. That's why I have a big problem with social media, because people are out there doing stuff that's unaccountable. And I think that that's ripping the fabric of our society. On this level, I do not think that you should be taking something off of any bookshelf without being accountable for why you're doing it. I would agree with that completely. But I have one more thing to say about that. I don't think, and I'm not sure how you would approach this or what the legislation required to do it, but I don't think library boards should be political entities. I think they should be answerable to the public. I mean, they're all going to get town funds, and the town can, and I believe this is the way it's structured in East Granby, the town can withdraw those funds if they really feel like it's gone rogue, which would probably shut most libraries down because the buildings are owned by the town. But they should not be, I think they should have independent boards. I don't think they should be appointed by elected political officials. They should be able to form their own entity and make their own decisions. And you can bet, once again, you have to have consensus and you have to have different ideas being able to battle out. But I don't think people should be pulled off, which I think I know a little bit about what happened in Suffield. People, you haven't been able to find a librarian, have you? I mean,
we did finally. It took a long
Oh, you
time.
did recently? Yeah.
Recently. She just started. She seems pretty good, but so far. But it took a long time to find someone, and we went through a lot of very good librarians who were good directors.
Didn't you have several that left?
They left out of protest, bullying by the first selectman.
That's inexcusable.
Yeah.
That's why, once again, that comes back to I would like to see some requirement like we do with our Board of Ed. So we can tell, I'm on the Board of Finance, we can tell the Board of Ed how much their budget is, but we can't control their line items, which in this case is kind of a line item of sorts in terms of running the library. I don't think the town's political elected leaders should be playing games, and I don't think they should have the right based on, because it's all current.
Yeah.
It's all, if we were to look back 100 years ago, you wouldn't be able to put a book that said a lot of things, that women should have the right to vote, that African Americans, 180 years ago, 150 years ago, you couldn't put a book that said African Americans should be able to vote, even 100 years or 50 years ago down south. And so, I like independent entities that are answerable at some level, but I don't think they should be privy. And once again, getting back to the Board of Ed, the Board of Ed's budget is separate. We can't tell them how to spend it. And that was done for a reason. And I think it's probably along the same reasons we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's a very good idea.
Yeah,
and we had, right in Granby, the Library Commission pretty much was removed. The Democrats were removed off of it and substituted with.
In Granby?
I'm sorry, Suffield.
Yeah.
Suffield.
Yeah, we used to live in Granby. So I
think
Granby
Suffield
does a pretty good job.
Yeah,
so
they
I was
do.
getting concerned. Yeah,
they do.
Yeah.
And we've had even further issues where the first selectman was monitoring who was using rooms. He wanted names of people renting spaces. So it went well beyond. It was like an infringement on personal privacy issues, and that's why it really hit a nerve with so many residents in Suffield. And like another example was the town green. We had a policy that was attempted. That would have required an application. This is the town gathering space, right? The public space. You would have had to have applied to use the space and potentially get insurance if you were using the space as well, $1 million insurance policy. It was written so poorly, and it went down in flames, and it actually received national attention for being improper. So, what many people in town believe is the purpose of that was it was very tailored to prevent any pride activities for Pride Day or Black Lives Matter. That's probably what the goal was. But
so can I just speak on that for a minute?
Please do. Yes,
so
love your opinion on that.
anytime you infringe somebody's right to access to a public space, I think it's so un-American. I think that this country was founded by people who would gather on the town green and express themselves, whether it was, before and it was the English crown that tried to prevent that, and we threw off those chains. We have gone through phases in our history, I think, where we've kind of pushed back in that direction because people are uncomfortable with change. But that is the bedrock of this country, is the ability to express often unpopular opinion, whether they're popular or unpopular. They should have the same voice, because when you bottle it up and you try to keep it out of the public eye and you try to stuff it back into a corner, it explodes. That's when this country falls apart, and that's when this country doesn't function the way it's meant to function. As long as you allow these disagreeable arguments. I can remember probably 30 years ago, the Ku Klux Klan came to maybe 40, maybe 35 years ago. The Ku Klux Klan came to Suffield. I've been involved. My mother was born in Suffield. I have a lot of friends, family members that lived in Suffield. She was born on a farm with my uncle in Suffield, and they moved to Windsor. So it's interesting that I'm, kind of all three towns. I live in East Granby. But so I know a lot about the history of the town just from listening to them talk as a kid. But my point is that the Ku Klux Klan, I believe, came to town 35 years ago, and they had a rally here. And I remember hearing the stories, because I was pretty young at the time, and I remember hearing the stories of people being really offended by that, but they had the right to do it. Now, as offensive as that is, there was no restriction of the town green when that happened. There was no restriction of town access when some very unappealing things have happened. I don't think it's a slippery slope when you get down there, and not to insult Suffield because I have roots here, but I think that the current administration seems to be afraid of something. Yeah. And I'm really wondering what that you're bringing up some issues I haven't really pondered a lot, other than just being on the periphery in East Granby and talking to people I know in Suffield. But it seems that there's definitely an attempt to change the body discussion, the political discussion, to suit what they want to hear. Yeah. That's dangerous, and I would give them some advice. Don't do that, because all you're going to do is get the attention you don't want. Yep. You got it. I think it was Kevin Rennie. That's the article I read. Yeah. A former state Republican senator wrote an article that was very damning about Suffield. It bothered me, and I remember calling up somebody I know up here who was pretty involved and saying, "What the heck is going on up there? Why? This is embarrassing." Yeah. But the problem is some people don't find it embarrassing. Yeah. We have to.
That article was so, I've never seen Kevin Rennie he's pretty critical of when he takes a position. Yeah. And, I like his writing very much, but he called the Suffield Republicans, who were leading this effort, a bunch of jaw-dropping ignoramuses. And I've never really seen him result to that type of language. Yeah. But it's actually true. They're not thinking this through, and they're just... They see an immediate goal without considering the wider
The only thing I would
impact.
correct you on that is it's not the Suffield Republicans. It's the powers that be at the moment.
Yes.
Because the majority of Republicans I know from, and and I'm always careful with that, because somebody said to me 20 years ago or 15 years ago when I was first getting involved with politics that the majority of people will vote for you if they respect you. Yes. Yeah. The majority of Republicans that I know in Suffield are very honorable and old school Republicans. Yep. Not part of this whole I don't know what to call it, but this activist, we hate change Republicans that feel it's okay to do almost anything to get their point across, which seems to be what they're doing in the administration. But there's always those people. Yeah. You have to hold them in check. We've had issues in East Granby. We had our first selectman in East Granby tried to change the zoning board to add a member because they weren't getting what they wanted. And the town came out full throttle and said, no way. They voted it down I don't know what the vote was, 170 to 15 or 50 or whatever at a town meeting. Yep. You're always going to get that fringe on either side that thinks no matter what you do, it's right, which is dangerous, right?
It is, yeah.
Unfortunately, I think they might have a little more strength in Suffield right now than is good for the town.
Yeah. I mean, no offense to Republicans.
But that's democracy. You have an election every 2 years. You can fight back.
That's
you know
right.
what I mean? You can
take
it to the polls.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where it belongs. I got standing out in front on election day at East Granby. I've stood out there 15 years now with different signs for the different candidates or for budget referendums, whatever. And I always say the best part of standing out here, even if it's 17 or 37 degrees on a November morning, is nobody's shooting at us. Yeah. This is democracy, and this is the beauty of it. And if you don't participate in it and challenge the ideas, and that's one of the reasons I ran, because it didn't really fit my lifestyle right now at this point in my life. I have a lot of stuff going on in plain English without getting into, just business-wise especially. And but you can't, when I see bad ideas, you can't let them stand unopposed. Yeah. It's your job. What's the saying? The price of democracy is eternal vigilance.
Yes.
I mean, when you do that, if you don't do that, you can't complain. Yeah. So win or lose, I get out there and I put the information on the table. I say, okay, it's a voter's job to decide. If they pick me, great. If they don't pick me, I'm not going to shut up. Yeah. But God bless them, they had their choice. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, we do hope you are the champion this November.
Oh, absolutely. No, I would have a
Yep.
blast going down there. I
Yeah.
mean, it really would be. You know, life's funny, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you might meet your spouse at a football game.
Yep.
And, you know, you might meet your, business partner at a chicken store, whatever.
Yep.
I mean, you never know how things are going to come.
Yeah.
My feeling is you always put yourself out there as best you can. And like I said, the issue for me right now is bad ideas.
Yeah.
When I see bad ideas, I give Tammy a lot of credit. She's very good at the cupcake socials and the pancake breakfast. People know her.
Yep.
She gets around. But behind that, I don't want to call it a facade because it's really not. It's who she is, okay? But behind that personality are some really clear values that I really don't think resonate with the vast majority of the people in our district. She's opposed education in East Granby. She opposed any sensible NRA-sponsored legislation because it was too restrictive. She's opposed, giving women a fair share of say over their own reproductive health. These are not the values that I think resonate with the majority of people. I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat. It was the same thing in East Granby. We had a lot of success getting parents to understand what Tammy and some of the other members of the opposition were proposing. And getting them to stand up and say, no, this is not okay.
Yeah.
We don't want to lose 7 teachers. We don't want our kids to go to a school where the asbestos tiles are cracking off the floor. And it's not easy because the rhetoric that people use to get elected is very powerful. I mean, we see it at the national level. It could be so far from the truth, it doesn't matter. But if you hear the same thing over and over again, when you see 100 signs go up in town that say, vote no to a 50% tax increase, if I didn't know anything, I'd probably vote no.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I don't want to, there was nothing about the schools, just vote no to it. So when you do that to people, and you take advantage of people, somebody has to stand up and say no.
Yeah.
And that's what I see my role, you know, and with any luck, people are listening.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. So, well, great. Do you have any final comments? I'd like to reminding people, our viewers, that early voting is going to be on October 21. It starts, so please consider voting early if you can. Election day is November 5th.
Yep.
And any final words? I'll
vote Mike Malloy 2024.
Sounds good. Okay.
I think I've said enough. Yeah.
Okay.
But I appreciate you having me on.
Of course, of course. Well, thank you very much.
And I love Suffield. It's a beautiful town.
It is. It really is. So I just want to thank you for watching Sunlight on Suffield, and stay tuned. We'll see you next week.